What is up, guys? Today we're taking a look at an air CPU cooler, and when it comes to air coolers, there are a few things you definitely want your cooler to have. One, and most importantly, is you want it to perform well. You want it to cool down your CPU. You don't want it to sound loud or anything like that. You just want good overall performance. Secondly, you want it to be easy to install. Nobody wants to spend an hour trying to get a CPU cooler, in their system. You just don't want that. And three, you don't want it to be that expensive. Nobody wants to spend $70, $80 on an air CPU cooler. So the cooler that we're taking a look at today checks all of those boxes. It is the Cooler Master Hyper 212 RGB Black Edition. So let's go ahead and take a look.
There are actually a few different versions of the new Hyper 212. We have the RGB Black Edition, which has an all black design and comes with an included RGB fan. The cooler itself is not all that large. It is actually one of the smaller coolers we've tested lately. Being that it is so small, we shouldn't run into any issues with clearance. Starting with the fan, we have Cooler Master's own SF120R RGB. This fan will run between 650 and 2000 RPMs with a max airflow of 57.3 CFM and a noise level between 8 and 30 dBA. The fan has a black frame with clear blades, and there are 4 RGB LEDs in the center, which will of course light up when you have your system powered on. This is a single tower cooler, so you have an aluminum fin stack, which is not that thick at all. From the side, we can see that instead of using normal fan clips that we see on other coolers, Cooler Master is using fan brackets. These should make removing and installing the fans much easier. The top of the heatsink is capped off with a brushed aluminum cover with the Cooler Master logo in the center. This will of course show out if you have a case that has a side panel window. Flipping the cooler over to the bottom, we can see the 4 heat pipes. These heat pipes are nickel-plated copper and are designed to make direct contact with your CPU. Taking a look at the base, this is one of the best implementations we've seen of direct contact technology. There are hardly any gaps between the heat pipes. Installation of this cooler is not all that difficult. You will need to remove the stock AM4 mounting bracket and install Cooler Master's own backplate. If you have a case with a CPU cutout, this can easily be done without having to remove your motherboard. Next, install the mounting bars on the bottom of the CPU cooler and carefully apply your thermal paste to the CPU. Remove the fan and then very carefully place it on top of your CPU, lining up the screws on the mounting bars with the holes from the bolts holding the backplate in place. With everything lined up, tighten the screws with a screwdriver. Now just reinstall your fan, which is easily done since Cooler Master is using those fan brackets, and be sure to connect it to your CPU fan header on your motherboard and connect the 4-pin RGB header to the supplied controller. And just like that, you are ready to go. That has to be one of the easiest installations of a CPU cooler that we've seen. Since the cooler is so small, there are no clearance issues with our memory, graphics card, or VRM heatsinks. The included fan is a standard RGB fan, so all of the RGB LEDs on the fan will be the same color all of the time. The included controller allows you to adjust the brightness level. There are actually 5 different levels of brightness. You can also cycle through different colors. There are also effects like blinking and breathing, and you can have these effects either on a single color or have them cycle between colors. Now on to testing. We ran the Hyper 212 RGB Black Edition in the following setup.
All right, guys, so at the end of the day, I think this is the perfect Air CPU cooler. It really does check all of those boxes. The performance is actually amazing for the size of this cooler. It placed second out of our test group of a bunch of coolers, a lot of larger coolers, a lot of higher end and more expensive coolers. It performed better than. Secondly, the thing is so easy to install. It's not that big. The installation process is super simple. You can do this inside of a case. You don't need to take your motherboard out or any of that stuff. It's just that easy. You get an RGB fan with this. Again, it's small, so you don't have any clearance issues with RAM, graphics cards, or VRM heat sinks or anything like that. It's just an awesome cooler, and the best part is that it's under 40 bucks. I mean, it's like it's more or less a no-brainer to get this. If you're building a system and you want to go the air cooling route, this is a cooler that I would highly recommend. There's really not much else I can say about it. It's just an awesome cooler, and Cooler Master has a bunch of these. They have like the RGB Black Edition, which we took a look at, but they have ones that are a little bit more expensive, a little bit less expensive, depending on, what type of RGB fan. Ours is the Black Edition, so it's all black, different things like that. But again, the Hyper 212 in general, any of them, I would highly recommend for your next system build. Now, if you have any questions about this cooler, about installation, or anything like that, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. And we will have a full written review on thinkcomputers.org. That link will be below. And if you want to pick this up, we have that link below as well. So until next time, catch you guys later.